Tonight on Bridge City News, a Lethbridge security guard was sent to hospital after being attacked at the supervised consumption site. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announces a new committee to deal with the coronavirus. And rescuers search for bodies after devastating tornadoes leave more than 20 people dead in Tennessee.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. A 29-year-old man has been charged in connection with the assault of a security guard at the Lethbridge supervised consumption site. Police responded to a call just after 6 a.m. yesterday of a man who shot the contents of a syringe, including blood and other fluids, into the security guard's face. Shortly before, the security guard asked why the man was shooting up in the waiting area instead of the consumption area of the SCS. The 22-year-old security guard was taken to Chinook Hospital, treated, and released. Police arrested 29-year-old Wade Allen Nicholas Crosschild, who faces various charges. Police say being shot in the face with a syringe is quite rare, but it does happen.
As first responders, whether it's police, fire, EMS, we do get exposed to those types of things at times. In this case, these are fortunately quite rare as far as purposely exposing somebody. Like in this case, it was shot with a syringe. So again, thankfully that doesn't happen all the time. But as far as the exposure to bodily fluids and things like that, yeah, it does happen oftentimes.
Crosschild is scheduled to appear in court on assault charges on May 26th. A Lethbridge man who's accused of sexually assaulting a woman last month is facing even more charges. 33-year-old Sohail Bindra is facing additional charges in relation to 5 more women. Bindra was originally facing a single charge of housebreaking and committing sexual assault and 2 counts of sexual assault in relation to 1 woman. He now faces more charges of sexual assault, administering a noxious substance, drug possession, and choking. In total, Bindra will now face a total of 14 new charges and will return to court on Friday. If you live in Lethbridge, you will notice work has begun to demolish the old YMCA building on Stafford Drive South. We asked a city official what comes next.
This property is part of the Civic Precinct Master Plan. There's a larger plan for the area, and there's no definite future plans for it, but there is consideration of what the entire block is going to be developed as. But for the interim, we will be removing the building completely, all underground elements as well as above ground elements, and we will be maintaining the parking lot for now. So there will be additional parking that will be available to downtown City Core. And the building, where the building sits, will be just turned into parkland with irrigated grass.
According to a feasibility study, the 37,000 square foot building is aging and it would be too expensive to complete all the renovations necessary, which is why it is coming down. Now that residential curbside recycling has been rolled out across the city, there will be a shift towards mandatory recycling for businesses and organizations later this year.
Businesses right now in Lethbridge represent around 2/3 of the garbage that's generated in Lethbridge and goes to the landfill. And looking at the materials that we're going to cover with this, that's cardboard, paper, and wood. Those materials represent, on average, probably around 20% of the waste that's generated by the businesses. In some cases, some businesses have tremendous amounts of wood, others don't have any pallets, like a accounting office or something like that.
A special information session for the Lethbridge business community on recycling will take place tomorrow from 11 a.m. till 6 p.m. at Lethbridge City Hall. This is Francophonie Month in Alberta. It's a time to celebrate those who speak en français and enjoy the French culture. We spoke with a local French immersion school principal who tells us why it's so important for kids to be bilingual.
I think it's vitally important for our kids to learn a second language. When we talk about Canada, that is part of our culture. And a lot of people will say, this is Southern Alberta, or this is Alberta, and what significance does French contribute here? Go to the northern part of the province. It was founded by the French-speaking people that settled here, and it plays a significant impact. We talk about the advantages that our kids have when they learn a second language, and not just just being able to communicate or employment opportunities, but to be honest, the cultural exposure that we provide them here at the school as well. Whether that be through understanding the Acadians better, whether that be understanding les Québécois, whatever that may be, it's an excellent opportunity for our kids.
The Official Languages Act, making English and French the official languages of Canada, came into effect in September of 1969. The Lethbridge theatre scene is alive and well in our city. Theatre goers and country fans alike will converge on the Yates Theatre for the first show of Dear Johnny Dear tonight. As BCN's Micah Quinn explains, the play is a tribute to legendary Canadian singer-songwriter Fred Eaglesmith.
The lights are on, and the performers are ready to play their hearts out for the musical Dear Johnny Dear.
Dear Johnny Dear is a story of a farmer and his wife. Our poor dear Johnny Dear is in danger of losing his farm and his wife. Times are tough. And this story, we've set it in southern Alberta, so we're hoping that it will resonate with a lot of the farming community here.
The story touches home with farmers who may feel that they are dealing with tough situations.
Johnny Dear, the character I play, he's inherited this farm. He's trying to hold on to it, and he's trying to, in a way, he's trying to do that, thinking he needs to do that all himself, which I think is not an uncommon experience for some men out there.
The music for the play comes from country singer-songwriter Fred Eaglesmith.
Fred's songs tell stories, and so Ken decided to craft a narrative around these songs and see what songs all kind of string together to make one overarching narrative.
Zaborski knows that Dear Johnny Dear impacts people in a different way.
The people who come out and see it are just touched and feel that they're watching a bit of themselves on stage.
There are over 12 songs written by country singer-songwriter Fred Eaglesmith for the play. Dear Johnny Dear runs at the Yates Theatre from March 4th to 14th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A Lethbridge woman was in Los Angeles last month for a taping of an episode of Jeopardy! After tryout, Sharon Lawson was called on January 27th and says she was ecstatic when she heard that she was going to appear on the show after years of trying.
It's been the #1 item on my bucket list for probably 30 years. I can't remember ever not watching Jeopardy! Ever since it came back on the air in the 80s and with Alex as the host with his mustache. And for the last several years, I've been trying to get on the show, taking the online test, and finally the stars aligned and everything came through. I was a little starstruck, not gonna lie, but we talked about being Canadian, which is kind of cool, and he was very personable and very engaging, and he looks great. I know that he just announced that today is the first anniversary of his cancer diagnosis, and I thought he looked really good and seemed quite strong, so that's a good thing. I know everybody's really pulling for him that way, so it was just overall a really cool experience.
The episode of Jeopardy! Featuring Lawson is set to air 6 p.m. Mountain Time on Wednesday, April the 22nd. The province announced today that it will be investing $100 million more towards upgrading operating rooms to provide more surgeries to Albertans. Large-scale renovations and new operating rooms are slated for Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, Calgary, Edmonton, and Grand Prairie hospitals. The capital funding is part of the government's $500 million commitment in the latest budget to help alleviate wait times. The province says the new investment will help AHS add more than 17,000 surgeries this fiscal year to meet the 4-year target that was set. Up to 30,000 additional surgeries will be available to Albertans by the year 2023. Just hours after confirming BC's 9th coronavirus case at a news conference in Vancouver, a second conference was called in Victoria to confirm 3 more cases, a man and 2 women. The province's health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry, says the virus traces back to people traveling from Iran.
We wanted to give you an update since this morning as our laboratory has identified that we have 3 more additional cases of COVID-19 here in BC. So I reported on what was our case 9 this morning, a man in his 50s in the Fraser Health region who has returned from travel to Iran. Case 10 is very similarly a man in his 60s who also returned from travel to Iran and is in the Vancouver Coastal Health region. He had a very small number of contacts and he's in isolation at home, as are the close contacts, and being investigated and followed up with Vancouver Coastal Health.
The coronavirus now has claimed more than 3,200 lives and infected more than 93,000 people around the world. So far in Canada, we've had 33 confirmed cases, but none here in Alberta. Toronto journalist Brian Lilly says our federal government may be letting us down by not properly vetting those who are coming from countries that have been most affected by the virus.
They're telling people that travel into Canada from Iran or other hotspots call us within 24 hours. Call your local public health agency and let them know that you're here and how you're feeling and start monitoring for symptoms. I know we can't go into full-blown panic mode on this, and that's not what I'm advocating. But perhaps the people that ask, have you brought in any alcohol? Have you brought in any cigarettes? Do you have fruit? Maybe they could answer or add another couple of questions to ask people when they're coming in from specific countries. And we're not doing that right now. I think the country deserves better, and I think it's setting us up for a very bad experience going forward.
Catch the full interview with Mr. Lilly discussing as well how fraudsters are using the coronavirus to scam Canadians out of their hard-earned money. That's coming up after Business News. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he has created a new cabinet committee to deal with the coronavirus outbreak. Trudeau says the group will continue to monitor the health impacts of the virus to make sure the government response takes all possible measures to prevent and limit its spread in Canada.
Regarding the coronavirus, we continue to monitor very closely and coordinate with our provincial partners, with the international community, the best things that Canada can do to keep Canadians safe and to prevent further spread of this virus. We recognize that basing our decisions on evidence, on facts, on the best science available is going to be extremely important for keeping Canadians safe. And we've created a cabinet committee that will have as a regular task to coordinate Canada's response to ensure that Canadians are getting the best information and make sure that we're watching carefully on the economic impacts of this virus on top of the health impacts on Canadians.
China's efforts to control the spread of the coronavirus has shut down factories, emptied airports, and resulted in a steep drop in carbon emissions and other pollutants. Analysts, however, caution that this is only temporary.
Right now, we're seeing drops in both carbon emissions as well as nitrogen dioxide. To me, one of the most interesting things about this is it shows just how tied China's economy is to fossil fuels. So when we see a slowdown in economic activity due to this virus outbreak, we see a massive drop in all of these emissions. The thing I'm mostly concerned about is a potential rebound effect, which we've seen in the past. After the 2008 financial crisis, for example, the government had introduced a lot of spending stimulus packages to stimulate the economy, and that actually led to an increase in emissions that was potentially more than would otherwise have happened if we didn't have the financial crisis.
Many trade events, including a houseware show in Chicago, are being canceled worldwide as the spread of the coronavirus continues.
Coronavirus is wreaking havoc on the trade show industry. We're seeing cancellations of these shows across the globe, and it's going to have an incredibly devastating effect on business in two ways. It's lost tourism and it's lost travel, but it's also going to mean that shows are not going to have the same opportunity to sell because you just can't replace face-to-face contact with online opportunities. We're talking about billions of dollars of loss, and that is spread across individual communities, sometimes in weeks where communities will lose tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars. Here in Chicago, we will not have the Inspired Home Show at McCormick Place.
The World Health Organization says the global death rate from the coronavirus is now at 3.4%. Rescuers searched through shattered Tennessee neighborhoods for bodies after devastating tornadoes ripped across Nashville and other parts of the state as families slept. At least 25 people were killed.
It's a tragic day in our state, a sad day. There are 25 confirmed fatalities across our state from West Tennessee to East Tennessee. I spent the day touring and visiting with victims and walking through neighborhoods, and the devastation is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. It's incredible. Our prayers are greatly needed for families out there who are dealing with a sudden tragic event that has occurred in our state.
The twisters shredded more than 140 buildings, burying people in piles of rubble and wrecked basements. Many are still trying to come to grips with what happened.
I woke up and looked out the window and I knew there was something serious going on, and I ran around the other side of the bed and I went to wake up Harry, and by that time the roof came crashing down on us, and we ended up between the ceiling and the floor, and
the ceiling hit
we
home.
couldn't get out. We couldn't get out. That's where we were.
Oh my God.
And all this stuff was up there on, and I couldn't get it off. I couldn't get it off.
Oh my God.
But I just kept kicking, and it finally came off.
The ceiling started coming down on us, so I jumped on the ground, he jumped on top of me, the ceiling landed on top of him, and luckily all of the brick that's back here didn't end up landing on us.
Yeah.
So we're grateful to be alive, honestly.
There is another beautiful pet up for adoption at the Lethbridge Animal Shelter. Today's pet feature is on Kona. Kona is a 7-month-old German Shepherd cross waiting for a good home.
This pet feature is brought to you by Aqua Steam Services, carpet, upholstery, and tile care.
Hi everyone, it's Officer Sherry with Lethbridge Animal Services. Today I am here with Kona. She is a 7-month-old Shepherd cross that was surrendered to us a few months ago. She's finally available for adoption. She's been spayed, microchipped, and vaccinated. To view Kona or other adoptable pets, make sure to check us out on Facebook at Lethbridge Animal Services or Instagram at Lethbridge Animal Services.
This pet feature has been brought to you by Aqua Steam Services, carpet, upholstery, and tile care. Experience the clean difference.
What a beautiful dog. Kona would make a great addition to any family. The snow squall watch for our region has ended. Fortunately, warmer temperatures are on the way. Complete weather details are coming up. It was a winter wonderland in the city earlier today. It made for a slushy day across most of southwestern Alberta. Fortunately, the meltdown should begin soon. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a look at all of the weather details. Jeanette?
Well, we started today with a snow squall warning in effect, and we had blowing snow, reduced visibility, and even a chance of thunderstorms. So we had weather all over the place today. But tonight, it's going to be a different story. Clearing, a high of -8, and then into tomorrow, it's almost like today didn't even happen. We're going to see lots of sunny skies and a high of 11 degrees. We could see some wind gusts, though, as is very typical of this time of year. What can I say? It's March in the southern Alberta. The weather is all over the place. Looking ahead to Friday, sunny conditions with a high of 7 degrees. We could see overnight showers on Friday night, and then into Saturday, it could be turning to snow with a high of -10 for Saturday, -4 is the expected high for Sunday. Then we're going to climb into the pluses again for Monday and Tuesday with highs of 5 and 9 degrees for those days with a mix of scattered clouds there. Now the almanac's highs and lows for the average temperatures, the average high being 2 degrees, average low -10. The high temperature on this day was back in 1987. It was 21 degrees, and it was a chilly -32 back in 1947. The sun rose this morning at 7:13 a.m. and it set at 6:22 p.m. And isn't it wonderful to see that sunshine staying out a little bit longer in the evenings? I know, I'm loving it. It means summer is coming. Let's take a look at the highs for tomorrow across the country. Over in BC, we're going to be seeing some showers, a high of 9 degrees in Victoria, 7 in Vancouver. 4 degrees is the high expected in Edmonton tomorrow, and a lovely 11-degree day in Calgary. Lots of sunshine tomorrow across Alberta, and it's going to spread out into Saskatchewan. Saskatoon's high is 2 degrees with lots of sunshine. A mix of sun and cloud, though, in Regina. A high of 4 degrees tomorrow. Winnipeg could see some flurries tomorrow as well with a high of -2. Now, our friends over in Toronto are also going to have to get out their sunglasses. It's going to be sunny conditions and 3 degrees. A consistent 3 degrees is kind of staying all across this region here. Ottawa could see a chance of showers, though, and lots of sunshine in Montreal. Now, Atlantic Canada, a different story, as we're going to be seeing quite a bit of snowfall. Fredericton's high 2 degrees, same thing for Halifax, -1 expected in Charlottetown. Now, St. John's, Newfoundland will see a high of 1 degree. They're going to see snowfall. They could see up to 20 centimeters, and they do have a wind warning in effect. They could see wind gusts up to 100 kilometers per hour. There you go. That is your weather.
The Bank of Canada is cutting its key interest rate by 0.5 percentage point to 1.25%. Analysts say it is in response to the economic shock from the coronavirus outbreak. It says the virus is a material negative shock to the country's economic outlook. The central bank says it is becoming clear the Canadian economy will not grow as much as previously forecast because the supply chain was disrupted by the virus and rattled consumer confidence. The statement released earlier today says it may further adjust its key rate if the situation calls for it. The travel industry is seeing a steep drop in business, mostly because of the coronavirus outbreak. Amazon told its nearly 800,000 workers to postpone any non-essential travel. Nestle told its 291,000 employees to limit domestic business travel and halt international travel until March 15th. The Geneva Motor Show has been canceled, and 2 companies, including Twitter, have told employees to work from home. The Global Business Travel Association estimates the coronavirus is costing the business travel industry around $47 billion a month. The beef sector in Canada started off with strong demand for red meat internationally, especially in Asia, as a result of the African swine fever. The demand in China, however, has slowed as Chinese workers at the port stayed home over fears of the new coronavirus. Brian Perilat, an analyst with CanFac, says Canadian producers with cattle on feed are in a pinch. He says in Alberta alone, since the coronavirus, fat cattle values have dropped almost $200 a head. He says feedlots were finally starting to make money, but now there's pressure on the feeder market as well. Power producer TransAlta Corporation is reporting a fourth quarter profit of $66 million. That is up from a loss of $122 million in the fourth quarter of 2018. Revenue fell from $622 to $609 million on a year-over-year basis. TransAlta owns and operates electrical power generation assets in Canada, the United States, and Australia. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up almost 356 points today to 16,779. The Dow was up 1,173 points to 27,090. The S&P 500 was up almost 127 points to 3130. The Nasdaq was up 334 points on the day to 9,018. Oil was up 2 cents to $47.20 per barrel. Natural gas was up 3 cents to $1.84. Gold was down 38 cents to $16.3655 an ounce, and silver was up 2 cents to $17.24 an ounce. Wheat is currently at $224 per metric ton. Barley's also at $224. Canola's at $4.61, and corn is at $259 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.18 to $112.45. Feeder cattle were up $1.33 to $135.50, and lean hogs were up 75 cents to $67.78. The Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 74.69 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he has created a new cabinet committee to deal with the coronavirus outbreak. Trudeau says the group will continue to monitor the health impacts of the virus to make sure the government response takes all possible measures to prevent and limit its spread in Canada. So far in Canada, there have been 33 confirmed cases, none so far in Alberta. Fraudsters are using the coronavirus to scam Canadians out of their hard-earned money. Toronto Sun journalist Brian Lilly has details next. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. On Friday, March 6th, World Day of Prayer will be taking place at 2 p.m. at Southminster United Church and at 7 p.m. at the Coaldale Mennonite Church. All are welcome to attend. World Day of Prayer is an international interchurch event that will be celebrated in over 1,100 Canadian communities and in over 170 countries. The vision of this gathering is to restore hope to those who have been touched by injustice. So come join fellow believers in Christ as we lift up prayers of faith for our world. Southern Alberta Men's Ministry is hosting Shine Be the Light Men's Conference on March 20th and 21st at University Drive Alliance Church. emceeing the conference is our very own BCN's Hal Roberts, with special guest speaker Pastor Leonard Anderson from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Tickets are $20 and $10 for college students. Purchase yours by visiting eventbrite.ca. For more information, call 403-327-4422. The Canadian Christian Business Federation is launching a Lethbridge chapter, and they invite leaders from all walks of life to a networking breakfast and presentation on Tuesday, March 24th, beginning at 7:15 a.m. at Smitty's on Mayor McGrath Drive South. Hear from guest speaker, CCBF Executive Director Keith Knight. To confirm your attendance, email tony.ccbf@gmail.com. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
A deal has been struck with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs, well, sort of, and it has nothing to do with a pipeline in British Columbia. To talk more about it is one of our regular contributors, Brian Lilly, joining me once again from Toronto. Brian, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is calling for patience as First Nations leaders are mulling it over. If it's not about the pipeline, is it more about reconciliation?
It's a little bit about reconciliation, a lot about rights and title to the land. The Wet'suwet'en people like to say, look, we never ceded our territory to Canada. Some activists go as far to say it's not even Canada, and the government has no ability to impose law or speak to people. But, that's not the majority of people on the reserve. That's where the activists are. So this, set of discussions, it was Carolyn Bennett, the Indigenous Affairs Minister for the federal government, Scott Fraser from the British Columbia government. They were both there. And a very distinguished and experienced parliamentarian, former NDP MP, Nathan Cullen, was part of the discussions. He helped broker this, bring the sides together, bring together the hereditary chiefs with the representatives from the respective governments, and they tried to talk things through. And so our understanding of the deal, we haven't been able to see it. The people in the Wet'suwet'en band, they're able to see it and discuss it. Our understanding of the deal is that it's all around rights, title, and going forward. On the issue of the Coastal GasLink pipeline, which sparked all of this and led to these discussions, they just said, we agree to disagree. There's still some, disagreement. Of course, we know that the majority of the elected council and the majority of people on the reserve back the Coastal GasLink pipeline because it means millions of dollars a year for their community. But the hereditary chiefs that were part of this negotiation said, we didn't really come to an agreement on that. So a little bit disappointing on that side, but we'll see where things go.
And BC Premier John Horgan says the Coastal GasLink construction project will continue even if a tentative deal with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs is not reached.
That's what he's saying. I think that Premier Horgan is a bit more optimistic than I am at this point. Look, we've got a real problem in this country when it comes to building anything, and especially anything that touches on First Nations lands. Because while the elected council approved this deal, the majority of people in the community approved the deal. The hereditary chief said no. So are you negotiating with the right people? And if they say no and Premier Horgan says yes, are we going to see more attempts to shut it down? I was just at the biggest mining conference in the world here in Toronto, and Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced a deal with two chiefs from two First Nations communities in far northern Ontario. I mean, talking so far north, there's no roads. And his deal is to bring a road to their area and a section of the north called the Ring of Fire, largest mineral deposit in the world, is what they believe is under there. And the chiefs are excited, and they say that this is going to bring prosperity to our people, connections to the outside world. Right now, they rely on ice roads and other means of travel. And there are people threatening to shut that down. We have a real problem in this country, and the Prime Minister didn't really solve it with this agreement. So that's why I'm not as confident as BC Premier John Horgan is.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Brian, is calling for the mining sector to move to a low-carbon future. I think it's by the year 2050. What's that going to look like for our economy?
Well, it's part of the whole idea of Justin Trudeau that we're moving away from natural resource extraction. This is the same mining conference the Prime Minister was at that I was at for the Ontario Premier's announcement. And the mining sector has reduced its carbon footprint significantly, but not as far enough as far as Justin Trudeau is concerned. And we know that when it comes to oil and gas extraction, which this conference wasn't necessarily about, that he effectively wants us to phase out of that. In some ways, when you look at things like Bill C-69, which the pipeline industry called the No More Pipelines Bill, it also affects the mining industry. It affects the forestry industry, all of our natural resource extraction. And the Prime Minister was saying, we've got to move towards a low carbon, no carbon future. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to offer, a tax break if you buy an off-road electric vehicle for the mining sector. So you've got a mining camp somewhere. Suddenly you've got to be buying electric vehicles. Look, a lot of our mining takes place in the northern part of the country. We've long since mined out the lower southern parts of the country. in the rich deposits are all up north where it's cold and where electric vehicles are going to be very difficult to keep going many parts of the year. So I think that the Prime Minister is trying to be a bit pie in the sky. He was asked by mining executives, what are your plans? Because they say, whatever your plans are, we've got to figure out how to work with them. You've promised net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Tell us what your plans are so we can start planning now. He's told them, you got to wait.
Our country saw a bit of a spike of the novel coronavirus this past week, pretty much all in Ontario, and the vast majority with a connection to coronavirus hotspots overseas, including Iran and Italy.
Iran, Italy, Egypt was one of the ones that has just popped up recently, and they're not calling it a hotspot yet, but Ontario's chief medical officer saying something's happening over in Egypt, so we don't really know. And one of the big problems that we've got, Hal, is that we're still experiencing coronavirus as something we import into this country. We do not have in-community transmission. Now, I believe there's been a couple of cases where people have passed it on to their spouse or another close family member, but they're always connected to overseas travel to somewhere where the virus has been prevalent. What we're trying to avoid is in-community transmission, and that's what Iran has right now, and that's why Iran is so troublesome. So you would think that maybe the federal government would step up and say, okay, we're going to restrict travel to people who have been in Iran in the last 14 days, or we're going to screen them better. They're doing neither. What they're asking people to do is quite literally, call me when you get in. They're telling people that travel into Canada from Iran or other hotspots, call us within 24 hours. Call your local public health agency and let them know that you're here and how you're feeling and start monitoring for symptoms. I know we can't go into full-blown panic mode on this, and that's not what I'm advocating. But perhaps the people that ask, have you brought in any alcohol? Have you brought in any cigarettes? Do you have fruit? Maybe they could answer or add another couple of questions to ask people when they're coming in from specific countries. And we're not doing that right now. I think the country deserves better, and I think it's setting us up for a very bad experience going forward.
Scammers are trying to take our money using the coronavirus as an excuse. Brian, the warning comes from the World Health Organization. The fraudsters are posing as health officials. How low can they go?
Very low. And not just World Health Organization. I first started noticing this when I was writing stories on this. And of course, you've got to go to the Ontario Public Health or Public Health Canada and the World Health Organization, and you start seeing notices on their website. We will not call you. We will not email you. If you see a number from a call from this number, it is not us. So people are spoofing the Public Health Agency of Canada's 1-800 line. People are spoofing the World Health Organization's emails, meaning they're making it look like it's a health official calling you or emailing you, and they're reaching out because they're concerned about you, Hal, and they just need you to log in and give them this information and that information. And once they've got enough information to steal your identity or get into your bank account, they're going to end communication and rob you blind. And so that's where we're at right now. So we've got all the organizations saying, this is not something that we're doing. Please do not fall for this.
Wow, that's terrible. Now, Brian, still with the coronavirus, the disease has hit economies around the world, and that includes the loonie falling after the American Central Bank lowered its key lending rate by 0.5 point. It's the largest cut by the central bank since March of 2009.
Yeah, since the middle of the big housing crisis in the United States. And of course, we all know what happened to world economies then. So a 50 basis point drop, half a cent in terms of lending, or 0.5 point, sorry, in terms of lending. We can expect the Canadian Central Bank to follow that. Our dollar took a hit. We've seen world economies hit by this, whether we're talking about in China, some of the stores that sell luxury goods have had to shut down. There's a big push on luxury goods in Japan, in China. They're very focused on brands like Louis Vuitton and others. Those stores have had to shut down because people aren't going out. In places like Italy, they've seen a huge drop-off in tourism in the northern part of the country. Milan hasn't even been hit, but the La Scala Opera House and the cathedral in the middle of town, they're seeing tourism dry up. Nobody wants to go there. I was talking to a colleague the other day saying, I've got a trip planned in about a month. Not sure what I'm going to do. Paid for his airline ticket already, but what do? Do you go into the hotspot? you start seeing people not going out, not shopping, not frequenting restaurants, not traveling. That starts to take a toll on economies. There's some speculation among analysts that we could see 0% growth for many companies in 2020.
Canada's telecom regulator, the CRTC, says it will not force mobile service providers to offer customers paper invoices, at least not yet. Two advocacy groups were wanting the CRTC to force TELUS-owned Koodo Mobile, who I used to be with, to reverse its move to electronic billing for all but a few select customers.
Yeah, so Koodo started this, and other providers have headed this way, including Rogers will go there at the end of the month. TELUS is already there. I'm not sure where Bell sits, but advocacy groups, including those for seniors, said, look, this is not fair. Koodo said, look, we're following the law, because the Harper government did bring in a law saying you can't charge people extra for a paper bill. Do you remember when that was the big thing several years ago? And your bank was charging you $2 if you wanted a statement mailed to your house? The government said, you've been giving people this all these years. You can't turn around and say, we're going to charge you for it now when you're not charging it for an e-bill. Well, what we're talking about here is a mobile service, and that's part of why the CRTC decided the way they did. You can get the bill directly to your phone, and most of us have smartphones now. There's very few people that are using a flip phone anymore, so you can get the bill on your phone, you can pay the bill on your phone. This is hardly something that is going to put most people in jeopardy, and if you do get the bill electronically, you can still go into the bank and pay it if that's the way that you want to do it. So the CRTC is saying there's not a lot of hardship here. We're not going to force this. So expect this to be something in the wave of the future. Maybe we'll see it next with cable bills, which are also regulated by the CRTC. And of course, everyone else will eventually follow.
Brian, what's the latest with the two Michaels being held in captivity in China? Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. Have you heard anything?
They continue to be held. No change in terms of their situation. No change in terms of the position of the Chinese government. It's now at around, I'm forgetting the exact number, but it's around 450 days that they've been held at this point. We run a daily counter in the Toronto Sun saying, this is how long it's been. Please call the Chinese embassy. They're not listening. There was another foreign national, I believe out of Sweden, that was charged recently, and Canada stood up and said, we stand with them and call for them to be released. It's falling on deaf ears with the Chinese government, and I don't expect anything to happen soon until the issue with Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei CFO, is resolved. In my view, these three cases are inextricably intertwined.
Absolutely. Toronto Sun journalist Brian Lilly, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you.
In Canada, it is estimated that up to 10% of our war veterans, including peacekeeping forces, will go on to experience a chronic condition known as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Joining me now in studio is Vance McGrath, a local retired warrant officer who served with the Canadian Armed Forces for almost 30 years, including conflicts in Afghanistan and Bosnia. Vance, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you.
So how would you describe PTSD and how it impacted you?
Well, I would say PTSD, like post-traumatic stress disorder, is be like an anxiety issue, put it that way. It's something that a person gets from being in a situation that they seem to be deemed upon themselves as a traumatic experience.
Right.
In my case, it was because of the Afghanistan and Bosnia. When I was there, certain things that I've seen and did, kind of against the norm of what we are in Canada, really impacted me, and I brought that home with me.
Can we talk about some of those experiences that you can share with our viewers? Maybe something that particularly really jumps out for you that changed your life?
Yeah, the big thing is what I've seen in some of the places I've been. It's you really can't prepare for it. When you go into we'll call it a war zone, for lack of a better term, but when you go into a war zone, you see things, you see death, you see the aftermath of what one human individual can do to another human individual.
Right.
It's really hard to understand in my mind how certain individuals can do that to another group of individuals. And when you see massive bodies, you see bodies that have been in an explosion or a landmine, or a vehicle hit a landmine, and they're missing all their parts. When you see
like fellow soldiers, for instance?
Fellow soldiers, or even civilians. Civilians take a lot of the brunt. They're kind of caught in the middle of it all. A good example, another one is I did a tour in Cambodia. Cambodia, under the Geneva Convention, you have to when you lay mines down, you have to plot your locations. They laid millions of mines in Cambodia, never plotted nothing.
Oh, no.
When we were there, so we had no idea where they were. But when you're out on patrol or doing whatever you have to do, you see a lot of children run around. It could be any age but young, but they're all missing legs or arms or severely scarred from, say, explosion or blasts.
They could be out kicking a soccer ball or just playing, right?
It could be anything like that. Where our camp was set up, we had wire fencing set up, and just on the other side of it was a farmer's field, but it was all landmine. He couldn't farm that field because he didn't know what was there, as an example.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's the big thing is you see children, non-combatants that suffer the consequences of the war, and it hits home when you're looking at it and you go, I've got a daughter at home, and it's like, do I want her to go through this? Well, not at all, and so different things like that play on people's minds, eh?
So what are some of the triggers for you with PTSD? Is it sights, smells, sounds?
Yeah, well, for me personally, I can think there's, I'm sure if you looked in the textbook definition, there's all kinds of things they can say to set triggers. But each individual, you can't say, well, a smell will be a trigger. Yeah, it could be one of the triggers. For me, it's a certain smell. For me, it's a crowded situation. When I go with the wife to, say, the mall, I'm okay, but once I get in there, and if it's, say, a Black Friday sale, and all of a sudden it gets packed or shoulder to shoulder, all of a sudden I get real apprehensive.
Really anxious?
Really, well, basically, the big thing, the heart kicks into it, it speeds up.
Sure.
I start to sweat. The next thing I know is I'm starting to look for the exits. And what it is because I'm in a situation that I don't have any control of. So the wife is good about that. She knows it, so she'll take me and we'll leave and we'll go get some fresh air, and she'll get me out of that situation. Another big one for me is smell. Certain smells will bring back memories that maybe I forgot about or haven't thought about in a long time. And I could point to one of those specifically. It was just after my tour in Afghanistan. We come back, I come home, and I said, I'm back. I want to take my daughter to Disneyland. So, I'm back home and stuff like that. And we were in Disneyland, walking around. We were up at going by one of the food courts, one of the many ethnic ones. I don't know which one, but there was a certain smell that come across there that hit me, and right away, it was the same thing. Like I just froze in my tracks. Basically, I went right white. The blood drained from my face. Again, same thing. Started sweating and got into a real panicky mood. And my daughter didn't know what was going on, and we said, we got to get out of here now.
So if there were lots of crowds, plus the smell,
there was the crowds.
That's a double whammy for you, isn't it?
And the smell and the crowds, and so I had to get out of there, go someplace, and regain my thoughts, settle down, and I was there for her, and I didn't want to ruin her, her day type of deal, eh?
Of course. So
of course, and eventually I got under control. We made it back out, but I had to kind of explain to her what happened and just watch what's going on. So.
And I'm sure she was very understanding.
Of course, yeah. So
let's talk a bit about that transition from military life into civilian life, and how tough it can be at times, especially when you suffer from PTSD.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like I said, I did 28 years. So I joined when I was 18 when I joined up, and so basically right out of high school, I joined the military. So I really didn't have, another job. And I left to join the military. So that was my job. The things that you do in the military, it's not a normal job. And as a young 18-year-old, you receive specific training. You learn things. You learn tactics. You learn different things. It's not like you're out there, you know, you're, I don't know, doing a teller job at a
And it's not
bank
all
or something.
textbooks, it's all hands-on learning experience.
Yeah, it's a
lot of it,
little
right?
bit of both. I mean,
Yeah.
you got the textbook version of it, so you understand the philosophy of what you're doing, but then you have to actually go out and do those in the field.
What about some of the programs that the government has now that can help you through your PTSD? What are some of the most effective ways of helping you?
The problem I have with the programs, the way it's set up now, I can't talk for people that are in the military now and the treatment that they're receiving and how it works out for them. I've been out for almost 10 years now. All I can talk about my own experience and being here in Lethbridge. There is nothing. They told me there's really nobody here that can that's qualified, if that's the right word, to deal with the issues that I have.
Wow.
I've seen psychiatrists, I've seen psychologists, I've seen cognitive behavioral therapists. That was here in Lethbridge. That was set up on my own through my doctor. That was not done through the military. I contacted the military side of it through Veterans Affairs, asking questions about it. They said they have nothing down in Lethbridge.
You'd have to go to Calgary, maybe?
They said possibly looking at coming to Edmonton.
Edmonton?
Yeah.
That's 5 hours away.
I
a
realize.
5-hour drive.
Yeah.
So for veterans who don't have programs and access to those programs, do they turn to alcohol?
Well,
I mean, it's, I hate to say it, but.
Well, it's true though, it's true. The problem we have is, or one of the problems I see is when somebody wants help, if I call in or somebody else calls in to say, make an appointment, say, listen, I'm having problems, they say there's a 24-hour support line you can call in anytime. All right, but that's just call in, that's just getting whatever's off your chest now. But if you need to come in for therapy or you want to come in for counseling, you could be looking at 2 to 3 months before you can even get in to see somebody.
There's that much of a backlog.
There is, and that's just my experience. You know, somebody might say, "Well, I got in a week." That's fine. That's good for you. But under my experiences, that's what's been going on with me. And
so we need help here in Lethbridge. I mean, we have around 2,000 veterans here, and some of those veterans must also be suffering from PTSD.
I'm sure there is. And
so we need help?
We do. We have the Legion. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Legion can and will step in on your behalf, but it follows on the politics side of it. I mean, they can only do so much, like when they're talking, if they make the phone calls for you, they can only do so much however they receive on the other end. Right. So if the other end is a delay or there's a backlog, they're not pushing that agenda through for you, so you're still on the backlog. I belong to, I don't know if I should say it or not, but I belong to a Commandos MC group. That's a Special Forces group. We're all over Canada, but we're through Alberta too. We have a lot of military members in that. Might not know them all, but we all share a similar background.
So you can support each other?
So we support each other. Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. So we have, we do what we call buddy checks. Every now and then I'll make a few phone calls to some guys I know, okay, they might be having a rough time. I'll just give them a call, say, how's it going?
Almost like an accountability partner.
Yeah.
Having somebody there to support you.
Yeah, and that's just our way of, because I realize that the system is somewhat flawed, and for, you know, he might be in between, say, we can get you in, but your next one might not be for a month. So in between that, what does he do? You know, and so we want to be there for you, and we want him to know, or the other individual to know, that there's always somebody there. You're not alone in this, and we have quite a few. Actually, just on a personal note, just last weekend, we had a guy that was ready to commit suicide. He was going to shoot himself, and we found out, we got a hold of him, we talked to him, and we talked him out of that. So now we're dealing with him and trying to bring him along.
When you come across a situation like that, Vance, where somebody feels there's no other way to turn but to take a gun to themselves or to end their own life, how do you approach that situation with that person? What do you say to that person?
Well, there's not really a lot that we have to say. You know, the big thing is we we call them up or we approach them, and we can say, listen, I understand what you're going through.
Because you've been through it yourself.
I've been there. We have others that have been there. It may not be the same situation, but you know, I'm dealing with it myself. And you know, the big thing is let them know that they're not alone, that we are there to listen. Like, you don't even have to talk. Want to go out, just go to Tim Hortons, have a coffee. We'll go for a coffee, just sit there, just to have the company. Like, if you want to talk, fine. If you don't want to talk, that's fine, but I am there, and I will be there as long as it needs to be till you can get through that phase of your life.
What kind of an impact does post-traumatic stress disorder have on relationships? Let's talk a bit about that.
It can be very strenuous. From personal experience and from people I know, a lot of marriages have gone down the tube. The big thing I find with that, and the same thing with me when I come back, is you come back, you're kind of a changed person. You're not the person you are when you left. And so after 6 or 7, 8 months, when you come back, you have a different personality. So you could be more irritable. You could be, say, less loving.
Maybe a shorter fuse, quicker temper?
Oh, definitely
Yeah.
quicker temper.
Yeah.
You know, you could say, you know, I don't care about nothing. You're just going to lay on the couch, or because you just gave up on the world.
So depression sinks in.
Yeah, depression. There we go. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, depression, even anxiety, you know, and if you don't have a strong spouse to help you through this, and especially, but the spouse has to understand not so much what you're going through, but has to be able to understand and kind of ride the boat with you and say, okay, listen, yeah, you're being irritable, or you're being like my wife as an example. Like, we're in the mall. When I start getting to my anxiety attacks and this other stuff, she recognizes it, and okay, let's go, and she
sees the symptoms.
She does.
And removes you from the situation.
And she takes me out of that situation. So she's very strong-willed.
It's beautiful.
And she looks after me. And then, but we talk, and she understands. She doesn't understand, and I don't think we've got into depth yet of what I've experienced, but she understands of what I've been through and where I've been.
But that's a strong woman that can do that for you.
Yeah, and you have to have that. And a lot of the problems I see happening is you have spouses that can't deal with the changes. They don't. I don't want to say they don't want to work through it, but you know, they don't want to spend the time and work through it to keep that relationship going and help the individual out in his time of need. And so what happens there is you have a guy come back. He's having a rough go of it. Now he's having family issues. So if the wife packs up the kids and leaves, so now you got an individual that's suffering from PTSD. He just lost his family. Odds are pretty good he's not working yet. So now, what does he turn to? Well, he turns to alcohol, he turns to drugs, or he looks at another way of relieving the pain.
Right.
So, yeah.
Where do you think things will go in the next 10 years when it comes to veterans suffering from PTSD? And what programs are needed from the federal government to help our veterans?
I think the big thing is they need to early recognition of the problem, and it's hard to do. Like, it's hard to recognize and bring forth the symptoms and stuff of PTSD, because a lot of individuals that are suffering from it don't seek help. You know, some like for me, for years, I didn't think I had a problem. I thought I was just in a transition phase, coming back from an area of conflict, coming home. So now, okay, I'm just transitioning back into a different lifestyle. It'll go away. The feeling will go away. The truth is, it doesn't. So it would be nice if you could see quicker responses to individuals that require help. More, like we talk about the wait times. So let's if we're having problems with the wait times,
let's address it. Address it.
Yeah, address it. Yeah. And so if there is a problem, then let's look at maybe we need to bring in a couple more counselors. you know, we have to work something out, or what can we do? What can we do to help, well, vets, but it's other than vets that have PTSD, but what can we do for vets that are returning, that we can get them into counseling now so that they don't lose their family, they don't turn to drugs and alcohol, they don't get kicked out of the military because of it, they don't have the thoughts of suicide, you know, and so a lot more, I think, has to be brought forward as awareness to help that situation.
Vance McGrath, local retired Canadian Forces veteran, thanks so much for sharing about your experiences with PTSD and joining us in studio today.
Yep, thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless. Thanks so much for watching.